From around the world and hiding inside your closet, this is Paranormal 1. Welcome back to the second episode. This is going to be, hopefully, more interesting than the first one. This isn't just going to be about me. This is going to feature our first interview with the leader of the Midwest Ghost Society, Michelle Lemire. And as you'll hear, even though I've known her for, I'm guessing, 5 years or so now, I still didn't know how to say her name right, but we got it right the second time here as I'm voicing this little introduction. So before we get started with that, though, I want to say thank you to the dozen of you who, to this point, have experienced the first episode. And that was just really intended as an introduction to what was going on. If you're catching this one, you didn't listen to the first one, maybe if you go back, that will give you a little more insight as to what's happening here and what might be the eventual goal. As we go through the interview with Michelle, there's going to be some links and information that's popping up on the screen. If you want to go to the Midwest Society's YouTube page and subscribe to what they have going on, please do that. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe here as well, and you'll be seeing the links for all of that that's going on, and of course, as well as the Midwest Ghost Society, the Midwest Ghost Society as well as Paranormal 1, you can check out the Facebook page there too, subscribe, keep up to date with what's happening, and just sort of be on top with what's going on. I've also got a Twitter feed. I probably won't be putting a whole lot on there yet. That's one of those things we're sort of getting used to. The web page is up. It's kind of just there, paranormal1.com if you want to see that. Not a whole lot going on, but I wanted to get something up there just because I wanted to have something up. So that's sort of where those things stand. And go ahead, subscribe and share this out there. And if it's something that you think has some promise but could use a little bit of tuning, well, pass that information along or that advice. I'd appreciate hearing that. And I do apologize in advance for the sound quality of the interview at the time we did it. The only thing that I could get to work satisfactorily was a phone recording app on my cell phone, and it did an okay job, but I had a Bluetooth earpiece in at the time, and you know how it is when you're trying to get good audio off a phone. So it is what it is. And I apologize not just to you listening, but to Michelle as well, because the presentation could have come off a little bit better. But we did the best we could under the circumstances. I was trying to use the microphone headset that I'm using right now, not completely realizing that there was a button on here that enabled the microphone. So there you go. It's a learning process. We're growing. We're hopefully getting better, really hopefully getting better as time goes on. But if you would like to be the next person or group featured on Paranormal 1, get in touch with me, let me know. Again, you can do that through the Facebook page, or if you want to send an email to para1contact@gmail.com, that's a way to get in touch as well. So if you want to be featured, we'd love to have you and talk to you, and maybe if you're not exactly the next one, we'll at least get you recorded so as I slowly get the hang of what I'm doing here and put these out hopefully on a little more consistent basis, then you'll be able to let others know about your group and what you're doing and where you're going and what you've done. So that's enough from me for now. We're going to move on to the interview with Michelle. And also, following the interview, there's going to be some videos posted. She wanted me to mention that a couple of them are videos of their DVR system. So they held up a handheld and recorded what they were seeing on the screen as they were watching the DVR. She wants me to let everybody know they have progressed since that point. So that's not really representative of where they are right now. But just wanted to get that out there. So even after the interview, keep watching and listening, and there's going to be some stuff posted there additional to what you're seeing on the screen while she's talking. So here we go, and hope you enjoy. I'm on the line with Michelle Lemire of the Midwest Ghost Society. She is the founder and case manager of the group, and I've known Michelle for many years. She was one of the actually the first in the first group that came out to investigate Conover Square, and has been out at least a dozen or more times since then. So we've gotten to know each other very well, and I've gotten to know the people in the group really well, and very pleased anytime I'm ever getting a chance to do something with them. So welcome, Michelle. It's great to have you. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your group?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for the welcome. I certainly can. My name is Michelle Lemire, as you said, and I am the founder and case manager for our group, the Midwest Ghost Society. We are based out of Plano, Illinois. We have been a team since December of 2010. So we've been operating for about 7 years now. A long, long time in this field. For most teams, they don't quite make it that long, so we're pretty pleased with that.
Good.
We do home investigations, we do private property, so, we've done barns, businesses. You can just imagine some of the strange places that have come up in 7 years. We travel to historic locations that are rumored to be haunted. We've visited stables, haunted cemeteries, and all kinds of that sort of stuff. So we travel all over the Midwest, been in Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, and of course Illinois, but I think I'm leaving one out here.
I'm sure it'll come to you.
Yeah.
So about over those 7 years, about how many investigations would you say that the group has had?
I haven't even done a count in recent times. I used to sit every year and add that up because I was really curious about that. But I would estimate it that we do about 15 to 20 a year on average would be fair. Some of those are multiple night investigations where we stay for several days. But yeah, so I would say with being about 7, it's quite possible we're in the 120 to 150 range probably for number of investigations we've completed.
Sounds like it's keeping you busy.
Definitely.
Now, about how many, at any given time, about how many people are in the group?
Well, we are a large team. We didn't start that way. Started as just me in December of 2010, and everyone kind of looked at me like I was a little nuts when I said, hey, you want to start a ghost group with me? And they all ran. But I am proud to say it did not take long. It was the following spring, and I had several members already on the team. That first year we were about 5 to 6 people. And currently we're sitting at about 19 people, and we have a number 20 that goes with on occasion as well. So we're the largest that we've ever been. We have put a cap on it because we don't want to get too out of control, but we have a lot of part-time members, and this allows our team to be flexible and still be able to visit places and get a group together when we need one.
Well, and about how many people are able to go on a typical investigation?
Typically, we're looking at anywhere from 6 to 10 people at a large location. If it's a home location, I base it on the size of the home, and look at contamination issues and what's going to be the best. Normally, we're only taking 2 to 4 people for a private investigation of a home. Now,
how do you decide who goes, or is it sort of just based on availability?
I've got a couple of things that I always look at. With the private cases, in particular, houses, businesses, things we don't publish on, those my team leads are always given the first invite to, just because they're the most experienced, the best equipped to handle it, and they're really the heart of my team, the hardest working, and I like to have them out when I can on those kinds of cases. After that, I'm going to look at the best personalities for a client's fit, and because not everybody's going to jive with every personality quite as good. So after meeting my client, I kind of decide who I think the best fit for that case is. And then, of course, next is, availability. Not everybody is available if it's a shorter notice for a private case. On our travel cases, I invite the whole team, and generally that is not an issue, because usually about any given case, half of them are not able to come for work or family reasons, and that's fine. That allows us to just have everybody invited and let them decide who's going to come and join us.
Now, in some of these travel cases, is cost ever an issue with people? I know different locations have charges and minimums. Do people run into issues with that, or have you ever had a place where you just say, no, that's too expensive, we can't do that?
We definitely have had some places throughout the history of the group where we've just opted, due to travel and travel expenses. A lot of it will depend on whether they will allow a true overnight stay. Some places' view of an overnight is you get to leave at 2 a.m. and you're from Illinois now, you got to drive back from Indiana in the middle of the night or whatever. If they'll allow a true overnight stay, that it does help absorb some of that cost, because we will just pitch out sleeping bags and air mats and catch a few hours of shut-eye to make the travel safe. If you get into hotel rooms and that, it becomes quite unreasonable quite fast in most cases. A few locations, it may have higher operating expenses and stuff like that, but they've just been a little out of our budget. In general, with the large group, which is one of the best, reasons for our larger group, is it does allow us those options, because we always can get a core group that is able to go on any trip. It may not be the same people every time, but that's great. It mixes it up and keeps things fresh and allows us to get into more places easily and with less stress.
Well, good. Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned about the cost involved. Does your group do anything as far as fundraisers, ways to try to raise money for the group?
Yes, that's a great question, actually. For many years, our group was just supported solely by our contributions. We did occasionally have a client here or there that would like to donate something to the group for our time on a private case scenario, but mostly it was us paying dues, and we were always really reasonable. I never wanted it to be out of anybody's reach, but it also showed commitment if they were willing to pitch in a yearly due. We paid $25 a year. We pooled that money and were able to add to our equipment, buy our batteries and stuff like that. That's not to say that, a lot of us weren't putting in other personal donations throughout the year to try and make things easier, and that helped us for a lot of years. But now, after 7 years, we're in a little bit different position. We've been running very successful public events with our local public at the Sandwich Opera House in Sandwich, Illinois, and that's allowing us, one, to raise a large amount of money for the Opera House and the continued operation of that historical building, but two, it does allow us to earn just a little bit of money to put in our savings, so that when things break or we want to upgrade something because something new comes out or we need batteries, we're able to absorb those costs in that way. Sometimes public presentations will also donate something to our group as a thank you, and we kind of use those funds to continue on with what we're doing.
Okay, so when you at the Sandwich Opera House, for example, you raise some money for their needs, and it helps you guys as well. So it sort of sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, and the public loves learning about what we're doing, getting a real hands-on approach it's a little different from what they're seeing on TV, and they come with these ideas, we're able to show them what it's really like, and the public really enjoys that interaction, and it's a win for us, a win for the Opera House, and we really have a great time with these events.
Now, and something I've noticed is a lot of times when the general public does come in, they've seen the shows, but in a lot of ways they don't know what to expect. They tramping around, making noises and talking, things like that. Do you still get experiences, or do they have experiences while they're there that something out of the ordinary that happens to them?
Yeah, and it's obviously not something we can on an occasion by occasion basis control. So we'll have some outings where we have smaller experiences or less of them, and then we have other ones where it seems like the public is getting a lot of reaction. And to be honest, we're the only team that's been in the Opera House, and it's not overrun with paranormal investigations or people, because we do this only every couple of months there. And the spirits there do seem pretty receptive to it, and the activity has grown as we've been going there more and more. It feels like they're more familiar with what we're doing and why we're there. And we always make a point of introducing it when we sit down in our sessions, that we are supporting the location and helping to maintain it. And these people have made donations to be there with them, and we think that helps. But a lot of our public, they experience, one of the common things there has been touches. A lot of touches, a lot of shadows. We've had people hear voices. We've heard footsteps in many occasions with the public there when there was nobody above us, which was pretty interesting. So they seem to have a good amount of experiences, and for them, these experiences are often some of their first. So even something for a seasoned ghost hunter that seems like, I heard a whisper. Okay, well, I've heard that a lot. For the public, this is a whole new thing for them. So it is such a heightened experience for them, and they really enjoy the small stuff.
Yeah, it's great to see some fresh people getting their first experiences, as opposed to, you were touched and you heard some voices. Well, anything good happen? Yeah, it's easy sometimes after you've been doing it for a while to sort of brush some of that stuff off. Now, you mentioned about how it still seems like it's lively there, and you're the first group in there. And I'll say too, from my experiences at Conover, things were they seemed a lot more active toward the beginning than they are today. Not that things still aren't happening, but just not like it not like it used to. Have you been to places that seem to have been worn out a little bit over time?
Yes, definitely. I for sure, after one of the things we enjoy doing is going to same locations over and over and collecting research from those places repetitively. Conover is a great example, one of our team's favorite spots, and we've met some great friends, including yourself, through there, and now a teammate. But when we go there, as you mentioned, in the earlier years investigating there, without so many investigations in the building, it really seems just so active. There were so many big experiences that you just knew you couldn't brush off as, there's an explanation for that. And then it's like later, after years of teams going in and out of there, it just kind of seemed like maybe they weren't quite as enthused about having all the visitors. And unfortunately for a lot of these locations, I think it's a kind of a catch-22. I mean, they want to have those teams in there, get the word out, have events, and help their location be successful. And certainly for some of these historical places, those funds help, mend repairs for the buildings or operating expenses, and they're important for them. But it does seem like after a while that kind of your experiences start getting a little smaller in most cases. And that's one of the reasons with our public venue, we don't go every month or every couple weeks. We're not flooding the place with private teams and stuff like that, because it does seem like they need a break or something. And I don't know if they just get bored or if it helps them regain energy and excitement for what we're there to do by having that pause. But it just definitely seems to affect it when there's so many people investigating the location.
Yeah, I've heard people too. Some people might be familiar with Tinker Swiss Cottage in Rockford. I've heard some people mention that place, the spirits there are kind of like, oh, here they come again, and just sort of hiding and ducking away and really not wanting to interact anymore. And I believe your group was up there about 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
I think there was an experience while there was setup going on, and then after that, the whole rest of the night, it was pretty much quiet.
We have investigated Tinker Swiss Cottage on, I think, 2 occasions. Sometimes the memory fails me, but I think it's been twice. It was many years apart, and I will say, out of the 2, I would definitely say that our first visit definitely turned up more evidence than our second visit.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not one that we've been to as frequently to develop that pattern personally, but I would definitely say our first experience was more active, so maybe the continued tours and groups coming in over those years might have diminished it a little bit.
Well, and from time to time, and I know there are some folks, in fact, Haunted Rockford goes to Tinker Swiss quite often. They have events there, and they've got a few psychics that travel with them quite a bit, that go to these same locations, and they've been to other places as well, of course, but it seems like a lot of, we could say, leads that we get in investigating, as far as people presences who might be in the home or the location, spirits that have been affected there or might be causing some activity there. Hey, let's ask for this person, ask for that person. A lot of that information comes from the psychics, it seems. Has anything like that ever affected your investigations, or what have your experiences been with using people who say they can communicate with the other side?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Our group, personally, it's just something, when I founded our group, it's not that I don't believe that those things exist. I do believe there are people that have abilities out there. Now, I will just personally say I haven't worked with anybody that has, without a shadow of a doubt, blown my mind away. I have worked with a couple of people that say they are either medium or psychic mediums, which my understanding is they are not always both. And we've had some investigations with those people present. One of them in particular, I had some pretty strong experiences when they were with on at least one investigation, which I found really interesting because we did actually find some evidence to support some of the things that she had said to me that evening. We worked with another one, and she was really awesome, a great investigator. She threw out some names and different things like that at a location that were not just, things from the known history. And unfortunately, we were not able to collect any hard evidence that really supported those claims of things that she was supposedly contacting. And it's not to say that we don't believe her or anything of that nature. It's just, for our group, we're looking to capture evidence, whether it's on an EVP on audio or something on our video cameras or stuff like that, equipment going off on command. We're looking for those interactions in a little bit different way. We don't feel like groups that utilize those things are doing it incorrectly, certainly. I think, everybody wants to do their research in their own way, and I think they should. But for us, we find that having those kind of personalities sometimes they will gravitate to guide the whole investigation with their ideas. And if we don't have any way of validating that their ideas are accurate, then they could be technically derailing an investigation by narrowing our thought process while we're doing our sessions.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, do you, I guess, has this ever come into play in a private investigation, as far as like in somebody's home?
We have not used anybody that I'm aware of that had any strong abilities in a home case. And typically, with a home case, I'm only going to take, very seasoned people from our team, and they're trained to respond to the homeowners in, certain ways, because we have to be very careful. With people like that, it's like they may be more apt to speak out things they're feeling and hearing and seeing, and that maybe we wouldn't understand quite.
Mm-hmm.
And these ideas don't always come out in a comforting, friendly way. I don't know if you've ever watched like Dead Files or whatever. It's like
Sure.
if some of those things were to come out of our mouth on a private case, we could be doing a lot of damage to that client's view of their home and how safe they feel there. And if we can't support that with any history or, data that we've collected that with evidence on it, it's very hard for me to include that stuff on the private cases. So we typically experiment, if we do, with that sort of thing more on a public event where we don't have a client there to observe, and try to keep it broad. So we include their thoughts in the session, but try to make sure it's not just about their thoughts.
Well, I guess when you are presenting all of the data you've collected or evidence that you've picked up at a private residence or private investigation, what typically would you do? Would you sort of lay it out in front of them and say, this is what we found, that's it? Or do you try to give them some advice or lead them in some direction after that?
In most cases, we'll go in, we'll do our investigation, and as anyone who does investigate knows, the work by far doesn't end there. So we go home, do all that review, stare at those camcorders and listen to those hours and hours of audio, etc., analyze all that stuff. We, of course, do some research where we can get information and try to include that stuff into our investigation to see if those trigger any responses.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get stuff, and, really the thing with that is if we get stuff, because a lot of the clients that, we get, unfortunately, they're so quick to jump to that it's paranormal in their mind and they're convinced. But we don't always collect evidence to support that. We do our best, we hear everything they have to say, and, stay open-minded. And then perhaps in some cases, these spirits are more comfortable with them and want to communicate with them, especially in the cases of a loved one or something. And we're a bunch of strangers. So maybe they don't
Sure.
want to talk to us.
Yeah.
So the results that we have for each client may not be what they expect. Some of them are expecting all of these pieces of paranormal evidence, and I have to actually go back and say, we did all the work here, and unfortunately there's nothing I can actually say to you that I can't explain rationally with, and I don't have a paranormal explanation for any of these things. And I usually explain to them the same, maybe they didn't want to communicate with us, or maybe there's other explanations. If there are paranormal findings, then we present all of that to them, good or bad, and try to discuss with them, our thoughts on it, what they could do to maybe diminish activity, find out if they actually want to diminish the activity. Sometimes we feel it's a loved one, and,
right.
It's a comforting thing to think a loved one's around. So
Sure.
We certainly would offer them advice to help them feel comfortable and do our best to help them out with whatever their goal is.
Well, have you ever had gone into a location and where somebody says, "Oh, we're getting scratching in the walls and this or that's happening," and you discover that, hey, you do have raccoons or a noisy furnace or something like that? Have you ever really come up with those hard pieces of evidence that no, it's actually something very earthly and not paranormal?
Absolutely. In fact, over the years, there's been quite a few cases where at least part of their claims in their mind turned out to have, for us, very reasonable explanations. In a lot of the cases, the clients did find this information comforting, but they were so nervous and so hung up on the paranormal thoughts that, they won't pull out a ladder and crawl up into the crawl spaces or their attic or the top of the garage. We've had in one,
Mm-hmm.
and we will do those things. We will ask for access to all of those places. We had one in a home. They were hearing scratching coming from the ceiling, so we pulled out the ladder, crawled up into the attic, and found, what looked like animal scat and stuff like that up there. While we didn't see the animal, it's fully feasible based on the remains of, that there was activity up there from an animal. Could have been squirrels, coming in the easement and running around. Could have been a raccoon. And that's been many locations where we can find droppings or other things that will suggest that, nests of some sort, that there's been an animal kind of hunkering down. And they're usually, in most cases, very excited for that kind of feedback, because you know what? It's a lot less scary to have a squirrel in your house.
You know how to deal with the squirrel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've encountered on one of our first home investigations, it was pretty funny, and we did actually find evidence of paranormal activity in the home on review, but she had a similar claim, scratching and strange things. A couple of bats come flying down into the bottom level of the house and are going everywhere. And, the homeowner's like screaming, "Oh my God, I've never seen a bat. This has never happened." And we had to catch bats and remove them from our home. We're full service, and we are looking for any explanation.
That's a good one. So, something to add to the resume. Now, there was some talk before you had mentioned about, and we were talking about, evidence-based or scientific-based, however a person might want to describe that. I know you guys have pretty much, the standard rundown of equipment, the K2 meters and night vision cameras and all those types of things. What do you use as far as, so maybe something a little bit different, something that, or something that's new that you're really excited about?
We have a few pieces of equipment currently that are newer to our arsenal of equipment. After being 7 years old, we do have quite a bit now. And as you said, we do have all those basics, but some of the things that we're currently experimenting with and enjoying are, one, we've invested in a couple of handheld Connect units. So we're experimenting with the SLS cameras.
Yeah, those are really popular right now. Now that the prices come down, a lot of people are moving into those. I got one myself. I just love it.
Yeah, and to be honest, for me, I'm kind of in the middle right now. I'm loving the fact that we can experiment with something that, like you said, is so popular right now, and we're able to invest in. We have 2 units, and we're working really hard to send those out on investigations and make sure that they're being used, because we're trying to really decide whether, we think their findings are, one, are they paranormal? Are they false positives? How does this equipment actually work in our setting? And 2, it's really curious for us to see what kind of evidence might come out of them. We've had a lot of false negatives. We've been able to, learn the software now and start finding things that aren't paranormal but are triggering it. But we've had some really interesting experiences, including one of our investigators, Christine. We were at a place called Someplace in Time in Missouri this year, and we saw a figure appear on a tabletop on the 2nd level, and she held out her hand, and she asked it to touch her, and I didn't tell her that it was touching her, but she reacted and said she felt cold, her hand felt cold, and I even used it in a way that said, "What hand feels cold? Is it your left hand, your right hand?" I made her really spell it out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the units do record audio, so we were kind of using that to see here, is she just excited and wanting something, or is she really feeling this? And she was able to tell me that it was her right hand, and that is what it was touching. My sister Amanda was able to go feel up her sleeve. It was about 95 in the middle of August and no air conditioning at night, so it was very humid, very hot, and she described a cold breeze. And my sister Amanda was able to put her hand underneath and feel a cool breeze shooting up out of the sleeve of her jacket or coat that she had on. And she was like, "Well, I can't say that I could agree that's normal," so it was an interesting experience. We also did an experiment there with our Connect in the old slave quarters, and we played some traditional slave era music, that they would have listened to during that time period. And we had two figures appear, and I'll be darned if it didn't kind of look like they were like clapping or dancing along with what we were doing. So
wow, that's great.
It was really pretty interesting. So
yeah, I've noticed that it really that particular stuff, and I've had the one that connects to the PC for a while as well. It really wants to turn figures into places where there aren't. And so it's kind of and I don't want to say an art using it, but you really need to learn the software
yes,
before
definitely.
jumping to conclusions.
And it seems to vary from different Connect versions, the different software versions and stuff. They don't all seem to work exactly the same as one another. But we do find in particular on ours that it will map out any long vertical surfaces, like, say, a stabilizing pole for the foundation in a basement, or we had map like a tall stack of speakers that were like, they went smaller as they went up, and it kind of looked like almost a humanesque shape you could see in the lines. And it mapped that. It mapped long, like, curtains in the opera house, like the big, heavy velvet curtains.
Right.
It also likes to map the corners of walls or doorways are a big one. And I've pretty much been working on training our team to see these things so that they become aware, so that we don't waste a session on something that is really easy to throw out. And I've showed them, how to kind of check to see if those things might or might not be paranormal. But we don't seem to get a ton of hits with it, but we've had some interesting stuff, as I said. So we're not ruling it out as a tool, and we're just continuing to research with it more and learn it better.
Yeah, and a lot of things are like that too. Even, the obelisk can give you, if you're walking around with it and bouncing it around, you always seem to get more results than if it's just sitting still on the table. So yeah, there's a learning curve with a lot of this stuff. But I mean, over the years, I have boxes and boxes of things that were just, I gotta have this, and now it's just sitting in a box.
Oh, we all do, trust me. I can think of a few things off the top of my head that are sitting around, good old Boo Bear and some of the token pieces out there that at one time everybody wanted to have. And it's not to say that we don't break them out and use them. And part of it's just when you get so much equipment, it becomes very time-consuming to try to remember to get them all out on every investigation. So you just kind of end up neglecting some pieces, even when you don't mean to. But right. We do try to get those out. But there are definitely some in the arsenal. We've got like a parabolic mic, and I guarantee you that some of my newest members probably don't even know it exists because we just don't get them out all that often. I did point it out this year a couple times to try to get some of the people that hadn't been familiar with that piece to use it. So we have tried that as well. But there's a few things, yeah, not quite as interesting once you get them.
Yeah, I've had a couple things that were very disappointing. I mean, the moment I got them, I'm like, no. This was supposed to be so much better. But sometimes once you get it, you got it, and you got to make the best of it. One thing I'm wondering about is right now it seems that there's a huge interest in the paranormal and in investigating and anything related to it. And I think a lot of it, and this is just me personally thinking, that people are able to connect better, and you can find like-minded folks a lot easier than you could 15 or 20 years ago. When it was just something you read about in books and nobody would really go out and do this crazy stuff. But now that people can communicate, organize easier, but the TV shows really seem to be a big motivator in paranormal research. So let's say in 10 years, people are starting to get a little tired of these shows, and I'm sure as time goes by, they'll start disappearing. In fact, even ghost hunters disappeared for a time, and the last I've heard, it's still, I think, a little bit in limbo, or as far as the certainty of coming back. and for a while that was the show. So I think if things start dropping off and disappearing, do you have any ideas of what the field might look like in 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said, certainly about the flood in the market right now on the topic and field of the paranormal. There's an overall interest from general enthusiasts to serious investigators right now, people who want suddenly to make teams and form them. And I never, a lot of teams don't want to admit, paranormal TV is beneath them or whatnot. And I don't think that at all. I take it with a grain of salt because they're not my experiences, but I was one of those people when season 1, episode 1 of Ghost Hunters came out on Sci-Fi. I've watched every episode probably 10 times. So, they influenced my thought process on the paranormal. Now, we're not exactly like TAPS. We don't do everything the same, and I'm sure that with any production, there's a level of theatricalness that goes into that's not what the average team is doing on their average.
Well, we've heard firsthand that that's the situation, that there are there are definitely I want to say here, not necessarily just limits, but certain things that the producers say, you've got to do this, you've got to wear that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think certain equipment or some of these new phone apps are a really great example. My team is not big on these phone apps, and we really haven't found any evidence of them being credible tools in our field with the ones that we've experimented with. That's not to say I wouldn't try something else, because I would. But I haven't had any experiences that made me think those things are great. But some of the last seasons of TAPS, if you watched, they were really pushing a lot of their phone apps and different equipment like that you could purchase through TAPS or, the studio.
So you kind of need to think about their motivation.
Yeah, and it kind of takes away, for me, who watched them season 1, episode 1, they were so much more like what our team is like in those early seasons. They went through the challenges that after I started our team, I thought if they can do this, and I watched their struggles, and I'm like, I want to try this. I want to make this happen. I went out, I recruited members, and, I'll be darned. Some of those things that they showed, the interpersonal relationships where people were arguing, or the family stress, the stresses of travel and stuff,
right,
or the undependable teammates, that cause a lot of problems if you don't get the right chemistry in your team.
Right.
And that was really a lot like what it was like starting your own team, and we're lucky to have come a long ways and be doing really well. But, I think as time goes on, and as you said, these shows are starting they're kind of at a boom right now, but some of the big ones have started to fall off, I feel like, or are in a state where they may not come back. I think teams are sprouting up all over currently still, but it seems like the average team does not make it more than a year, unfortunately. They start in the spring, they hit it hot and heavy for that, nice weather period, and then winter comes, and next spring you never hear from them again. That's not to say our team doesn't slow down a little bit, but we are active all year round, and that's a good thing. I think as time goes on, unfortunately, a lot of these teams are going to fall off the map. You're not going to hear from these so-called para-celebs and stuff. I think some of them are just going to disappear, and the fad is going to pass for a lot of them. And I think only the really serious groups are going to stay.
Well, now, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of groups that have come into Conover, and I'd give them the hour-long walk through their first time through, and I usually get a pretty good feel for how serious they were about it and what kind of experience they had by, some of the questions they'd ask and some of the stories that they'd share. But I'm happy to say I don't recall any that I just kind of cringed and thought, uh-oh, I don't want to leave them loose in the building here for a few hours because I think we might have problems. Everybody so far has been pretty good, but have you run into any groups where you just think, uh-oh, they're going to give the rest of us a bad name if they start going into people's houses and businesses?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, let's put it this way, semi-local teams to myself. I've seen posts on their pages on Facebook about who wants to go to a private investigation with us tonight and someone's house. And, that's like the biggest thing. It's like I'm cringing. Or they're posting pictures of people's private homes and them. And, it doesn't feel right to be putting that kind of personal stuff out there on their behalf, or to be taking somebody into somebody's home that you just solicited on Facebook that day, I mean,
right.
You don't know how they're going to react. I mean, I guarantee you if one of these so-called investigators freaks out and screams and runs out, I mean, this homeowner is scarred. And, they've got to stay there. And it's like, I've just seen some things out of teams, the things we notice when we go places, it's garbage in places, people who don't clean up after themselves, graffiti, or recently one of our favorite locations posted someone came in that they let into the building and they stole things out of the building that were from that building. And, I realize not every team is maybe a serious structured team as we are, but it's just general respect seems to be an issue with some of the more, relaxed teams of friends who might throw together for one weekend to go hang out and do this. And certainly I don't think that entails all the teams out there by far. There's a lot of great teams we've worked with, and we love working with other investigators and teams. But we've seen a lot of stuff over the years of, even some of these people who hold events and different event companies, just money being an issue, them taking money from locations or not paying them. And there are certainly a lot of people who don't give a good name to the field out there.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because if we want to continue to get access to public places and homes and wherever it is that people feel something's happening, if the word is out there that they're going to burn your place down, or they're going to go through your lingerie chest looking for whatever they can find, that doesn't bode well for the future of being able to explore some of these places too. That's not good. Now, you had touched on it a little while ago, and I think we're just about ready to wrap up here. I don't want to keep you on too much longer, but we had talked about, or you had mentioned about some of these historic places. Do you have any kind of research that you do, any kind of set research into a place before you go into it, as far as some of the older public places, for example, as opposed to somebody's home?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, as our team has went on, in the past we've had some people who have just, I'll admit, I'm personally not the best candidate to do all the research. I do some, but I find it's not my strength, and I'm not as good at it, and I don't have the patience some of the people do, But what we've done over the years is always look for that strong person on the team, and actually this spring, or last winter, I should say, we designated Rachel, who's been with our team now for, I think, about 3 years, roughly off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. She's our lead researcher. So typically for every location, private or non-private, I pass that to her as her main function for the team. Whether she's attending an investigation or not, she still does the research for us, and she will do the bulk of our research and try to find out valid history and names and things that, like you said, we might want to try those just to see if they get any reaction. Certainly talking with people who work at the locations or live on these locations, that gives us a whole nother perspective that might be different than the typed research that we might find. And we generally try to include all of that and see what is going to give us a response, if anything, because in some places you don't necessarily know. I mean, you might hear a story, oh, there's a child named Billy there. Well, who is Billy? I can't find anything about him. Am I going to talk about Billy for 6 hours, or am I going to look into some hard research and base my questions and my investigation on that research and see where it goes?
Now, have you found that you're getting better information now that she's dedicated to this?
Yes, definitely. The group is more educated and aware of the research when we go on these locations, and it's been an immense help to have one person kind of in charge of getting that collected. Now, I always encourage them because, you know, like we have one of my team leads, Candy, she's on Ancestry, and so sometimes she can take it a bit further. She has some names and try to check things out that way, find where people were buried, etc. And I always encourage, if somebody has something to add to it or find something different, we all share that on a post before. And one of the things that we had started doing this year was kind of printing out some of that research to take into our sessions. And, you know, I will admit here, as the end of the year comes, we've been a little more lax on that part and just kind of reading it in advance of the investigation. But having something in your hand with, you know, those key names and dates and things like that, it definitely helps get to a better, more guided investigation.
Well, it sounds like you must be doing a lot of things right for the group to be together for 7 years. I believe a lot of the folks have been with you pretty much from the beginning, at least it's only been about 5 years now that we've known each other, but it seems a lot longer than that.
It does.
In a good way, of course. But so you've got some good advice for folks. Looks like you built some good practices into your group. I guess if we just had to ask you one last question here, if there were some people just starting to get into the field, had never picked up a flashlight and walked into a dark building in their lives so far, what would you recommend to them as far as getting a start? Or if they wanted to put a group together, what would be the best way to go about doing that?
Some of the pieces of advice I would offer to somebody who's brand new to the field is, you know, they're typically very fired up and passionate about getting involved, but they don't know where to start. I would encourage, one, you know, some of these teams like ourselves that have been around for 7 years, yeah, we have an arsenal of equipment. But when we started this, we literally had like 2 recorders that came from Walmart and a K2 meter that I got as a gift, and, you know, a basic flashlight to go into the dark. And we started with these basic pieces of equipment and just got acclimated with the process of investigating, getting us our first kind of hair on end experiences and learning how we were going to react to those. Getting used to seemingly maybe talking to yourself in a dark room is just an art in itself, and being comfortable. Can you come up with questions to sit still in a dark room for 45 minutes or something? You know, it could be challenges that people aren't expecting when they come into it. You know, you can only ask, what is your name, so many times. So
definitely.
I would definitely recommend that they not focus on getting the most highest end pieces of equipment. Let that stuff come with time. Grow as your group grows and you learn what you like and what you want to try. Try those things, but it doesn't have to be about having $3,000 in equipment. You could get a lot of evidence from a $20 audio recorder. I would network and work with other investigators online or in your area. We've learned tons of stuff about how we wanted to run things in our group, how we want to investigate over the years by working with other teams and other people and collecting ideas. They, you know, if you network with them well, they'll share ideas for places you might be able to go, how a new piece of equipment is working out for them, or something maybe they're like, nah, I wouldn't get that one because we just don't ever use it. It sits in that box. And my last kind of bit of advice for someone getting into the field is, honestly, in my my opinion, if you're getting into the field with just the idea that you are going to become a paranormal celebrity or famous or get a ghost show on TV, I don't think the direction of the field going forward will be for those type of people. I'm not saying they won't exist, that there won't always be a show or some celebrities, but I think it needs to be about the investigating, about the evidence. That really should be your number one passion rather than trying to just look for a quick way to fame.
Good advice. Good advice. And you know, and I guess I've, just as a little bit of a follow-up there, I've heard that, like, for example, we're outside of Chicago. You're a bit of a ways. I'm a whole heck of a lot of ways out. I hear that in that area that there's a lot more competition between groups, as opposed to out this way, there's some more cooperation. Is that anything that you've encountered or heard about?
I couldn't say honestly for sure. I do see some of the Chicago area teams online, and I do network with them. Mm-hmm. And the ones that I've been networking with, seems like they're working together fairly well from my observations. Okay. Without having met these people or their personalities in person. But overall, in this area, Northern Illinois area, my experiences have been pretty good from, working with other teams or seeing that other teams are working with other people. And there's always going to be a few out there, that they really just think that they know better and their ideas are better and they don't need to learn from anyone. And, there's some of those people, you'll never change their mindset. But from my observation, it seems like mostly the teams are trying to work together. Our goals are not necessarily all 100% the same with our teams and what we want to do, but it seems like people are trying to network and be positive most of the time. There's a few egos out there and things flare up sometimes online and you'll see that, but it seems like mostly everybody's trying to be supportive to one another's missions.
Well, hopefully what I heard then were just a couple people who had isolated bad experiences. And I'd like to think it's more the way you're talking about it, because that's certainly what I've seen firsthand. And I know sometimes when there's limited places to get access to, there might be some competition with that, or the different groups may have different types of ideas of what's a good way of doing things and what's not. Or somebody leaves one group and goes to another and causes some issues there. So hopefully my information was bad, and everybody's out there helping one another, and I know that there's a lot of Facebook groups out there for networking, meeting people, and trying to pull people in for groups, or people who are looking for groups to join, or if somebody needs something in a different part of the country. I know you are part of a group that is handling equipment.
Yep, we also do run a page. If anyone's interested, they can find our Facebook page. So on Facebook, it's The Midwest, and then that's like all together, no capitals, and then space, Ghost Society, all one word, no capitals. And that will bring you to our homepage. We do have several groups that we run that are linked to that page on Facebook. We do have a few pages out there which could be a help to some other people out there if they're interested in getting into the field or are in the field. One of them, we have a Facebook group that is dedicated just to the purchase and sales of paranormal equipment and kind of sharing ideas on equipment and finding stuff that you're looking for. We run another group that, as you mentioned, is just more for networking and looking. If you have a case and you need somebody in Michigan in this particular city, how do you find someone? That group is so you could post those kind of inquiries, or if you're looking to join a group, or if your group is looking for members. We have another group that is just solely for the discussion of the ideas on the paranormal, just for people to chat about it with. So they can find all of those by going to our Facebook, and there will be linked groups featured on the top of the page, and they can like our page and check out all the linked groups, and we'll give them those things as mentioned.
And you have a web page too for the Midwest Ghost Society as well?
Yes, our website is www.midwestghostsociety.com. MidwestGhostSociety.com. No capitals or nothing like that, just MidwestGhostSociety.com.
All right, so people can go there and get some more information. The links will also be provided and should be showing up for anybody who is interested in finding out more about Michelle and the Midwest Ghost Society. And, well, Michelle, unless there's anything that you want to throw in here, I think we should be good.
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time and coming on here and bearing with me in this learning experience as we're trying to get off the ground and see what this is all about and what happens. So I'm pleased that you were able to spend the time. You were my only guest in the Ancient Conover Square Ghost Tours podcast. And I'm glad you were able to be the first one here. And I wish you and your group much more success in the future.
Well, thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure as always.
Where are you? Footsteps outside my door, not sure who's out there walking around.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the interview and learned a little bit more about what Midwest Ghost Society does and who they are and where they've come from and maybe where they're going even in the future. Plenty of opportunities there, links to get in touch with them, follow them, see what they're about. If you would like to be the next group featured here on the interview, as we hopefully get bigger and expand and have a larger reach with every episode that goes by. Reach out to peril1contact@gmail.com or through the Facebook page. Send a message through there, and we'll get something worked out. If you have any words of advice or something you'd like to see or hear featured, pass that along. Same contact information, peril1contact@gmail.com, or go to the Facebook page and send a message through there, maybe even through the YouTube comments. As I said, I'm still figuring this stuff out, so reach me whatever way you can. If you don't hear back, keep shooting at me, and eventually something will happen. Well, I appreciate you coming by and having a listen and a watch and being a part of whatever's going to happen next. We'll see where it goes. So thank you, and until next time, we'll see you in the dark.